With Chainsaw Man chapter 208, the story, it takes a turn for the darker here because the battle with fake Chainsaw Man, it has gotten more intense, and the use of innocent humans as a shield to be used against Denji has only continued to escalate things, and it's gotten to the point that Yoru has decided to step in for what is an action-packed chapter. So we open up this chapter with fake Chainsaw Man and Denji continuing their battle from before, but this is where there's a noticeable change. The human beings that were used as a shield are serving as a distraction for Denji, and it's becoming clear that with every moment that passes, things are escalating. They're crying out in pain as the battle's raging on, and with every move being made by fake Chainsaw Man, every missed punch, every dodge punch by Denji, their bodies, they are in pain, and their bodies have blood coming out of various parts of them. With each beg and plea for help, we see Denji getting mentally affected by their suffering. And mixed in with this, we also see some of that classic Denji humor where he asks one of the guys complaining about their pain and suffering if they expect him to get a cushion. But it's during this time that we see a plan begin to formulate. One of the people says to Denji, hey, you should attack the heart of fake Chainsaw Man, something that even Denji is able to understand immediately because he's associating this strategy with playing a video game where you kill the big boss character and it wipes out all the lower characters, which the Karen in the group definitely take exception to this being referred to as being a minion. But Denji wastes no time in jumping around the battlefield trying to position fake Chainsaw Man in a way that results in Denji seemingly having a wide open shot at fake Chainsaw Man's heart in order to put the fight at an end. But as the age-old expression goes, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And when you know it, Denji's no different. Fake Chainsaw Man takes advantage of Denji's big heart and he shows his own heart to Denji, but there's a catch here. Where his heart is, there's another person that's begging for help, and this leads to Denji once again pulling his punch for what could have been a lethal blow, and fake Chainsaw Man just slams Denji with the punch so hard that it sends him flying through the air and into the building behind them. It's at this point that Yoru, she's finally had enough and she makes her presence known like a boxing coach that is giving advice to their prize fighter before they lose the match. She tells Denji he's not going to be able to win if he's worried about their safety, and she takes it a step further, reminding him that even if his goal is to be liked and loved by others, is basically irrelevant because eventually they're going to move on to someone else, just like they did when Mitaka was once popular. It's at this point that Yoru offers a helping hand to Denji, but before he can escape and before he can accept their help, the Falling Devil once again makes her presence known, this time by using her powers to lift the building they're inside of into the air, and she demands for the humans to fear her as a result, which circles us back to the real-life Fami, who is watching the entire scene with, you guessed it, a scaredy cat expression on her face. Hands down, the most unserious devil we've had in part 2, ironically, in the entirety of part 1 of the story and part 2 of the story. Now, there's quite a bit that we can take away from this last chapter, including some rather interesting symbolism here that connects back to Denji's character and should make you better appreciate the character. The whole premise of being forgotten by someone is irony at play here, since when a Chainsaw Man eats a devil, a Chainsaw Man obviously being Denji, people forget that whatever it was existed and the fears that associate with them. And yet Denji has himself a situation where he is afraid of being forgotten as Chainsaw Man. When you read in between the lines what we have here, Denji is someone who, for the longest time, due to his upbringing, hadn't really had a purpose. He was being used at every turn, treated like a tool, a dog, a weapon. Yet as Chainsaw Man, he's more in touch with his true self than ever before. Getting that acknowledgement is something that reaffirms his sense of ego. Ego in this sense being his identity and self-worth. When you strip everything down for Denji's character, he's really just someone who wants to be loved, liked for him. Hence the iconic line to Reze, why doesn't anyone just want my Denji heart? Why is it only my Chainsaw Man heart? But it's ironically the power of Chainsaw Man that keeps him stuck in this cycle of suffering that he has yet to break. Over and over again, we see it on display. He gets beaten up physically. He gets joys out of experiencing life. He looks like he's forming bonds with people. Then betrayal happens. Then he loses people he cares for, either through that betrayal or through death where they're taken from them. Then he gets put through the ringer mentally as his spirit begins to break, and then someone steps in who's been watching from a distance, sees his emotional vulnerabilities on display, and then they begin to gaslight him, and it restarts the whole process all over again. He's endured enough that it should drive him insane. Yet, even as he's dealing with the trauma in his own way, albeit in a way that isn't necessarily the most healthiest at times, he still has that vice grip applied to him that clenches in so hard that it won't let go. It's because he's in that cycle that he knows the pain that these people are going through, even though it's only physical and his is more emotionally and mentally painful. Even then, as a devil hybrid, he too can understand the physical pain as well. After all, as a devil hybrid and even as a human, he's died and he's come back to life more times than you can count due to the benefits of being a hybrid. And when he died as a human, obviously Pochita stepped in. Now, the other thing that we have here that we have to look at is another contrast being set up with Denji and Yoru. It's very fitting when you think about it. Yoru being the person to push Denji towards the answer of, is he a human or is he a devil, is very poetic. There are two sides to Denji's character, one human and one devil hybrid. Previously in part 2, he was given the chance by Yoshida to fully experience a human life, a normal, boring human life, and he was suffering. He missed being Chainsaw Man. Now Yoru is being used to push Denji towards the other extreme of embracing devil nature. If he does that, it's possible he gets more joy out of being Chainsaw Man than ever before, something that we do know is a big part of Denji's character. He said it himself previously, and it really makes you realize that part 2 of the story, for as much as it's about Mitaka, it's also about Denji's own identity struggle. He wants to be Chainsaw Man because it makes people pay attention to him. It's part of why he doesn't want to kill those people, not just because they're suffering, but more so because deep down in his own heart, he knows that with them, they're dead. There will be fewer people to cheer him on as Chainsaw Man and give him the validation and the sense of purpose that he desperately wants. Yet at the same time, Denji wants to hold on to his humanity, and that's why this conversation is so poetic and why it had to be Yoru, the war devil, who had to have this conversation with him and not necessarily Mitaka. Devils care also about being recognized, but whereas Denji wants love and affection, devils, they want fear, because the stronger the fear, the stronger their powers are, which makes the presence of the falling devil so important here too, because the last time that Denji encountered the falling devil, he helped Mitaka find herself, and now it is time for Denji to come full circle and find himself as well. But Fujimoto is placing him in a position where there are no real easy answers. In terms of there being a third option, if there is one, he's going to have to scratch and claw to find his way to it. He's seemingly being presented with a either-or situation, which makes it very interesting to see which path he takes, which that's going to be my chapter question for you guys. Which path do you think Denji will take? While you think that over, click here to watch more videos from Anime Explained and check back next week for the next Chainsaw Man chapter.